Overview of the Penal Code Section 995 motion. This document is a motion to dismiss filed under California Penal Code Section 995 and 859B on behalf of the defendant, Richard James English, case number 2,023,004,275. A Section 995 motion asks the court to dismiss an information or indictment on the grounds that the defendant was committed without reasonable or probable cause, or that statutory procedures were violated before the preliminary examination. Q arguments ring motion. Violation of the 10-court day rule Section 859B of the defence argues that the defendant remained in custody without bail past the statutory limit to hold a preliminary examination within 10 court days of his arraignment/plea. The motion asserts that the defendant never personally waived his right to a speedy preliminary hearing and objected to the continuances. Denial of right to counsel of choice. Structural error. The document claims the trial court committed structural error under the Sixth Amendment by denying the defendant's request to substitute attorney Leonard B. Levine as his attorney of record, in place of appointed counsel. Ineffective assistance of appointed counsel. The defense alleges that court-appointed conflict defense attorney CDA Martin Ziefringer was unprepared, lacked discovery/case files, failed to issue necessary subpoenas, and inappropriately requested continuances over the defendant's objections while failing to argue for the defendant's release on own recognizance or violation of the uninterrupted hearing requirement Section 861. The motion claims the preliminary examination was improperly postponed and not completed in one continuous session without the required showing of good cause or personal waiver. Superior Court Judge Michael Bush threatened Leonard Levine with contempt of court. According to the factual summary on page 7, lines 9-14 of the motion, the following sequence of events occurred on February 19, 2026. 1. Arrival and appearance. Attorney Leonard B. Levine arrived in court at 9:33 a.m. The preliminary examination began at 9:30 a.m. Levine, who was formerly the attorney of record, at that moment was not the attorney of record. Mr. Levine advised the court that he wished to become the attorney of record and argue pending motions. 2. Interruption and contempt threat. As the court continued with the preliminary examination, Mr. Levine interrupts the proceedings. The court threatens Leonard Levine with contempt. 3. Outcome. The defense oral motion to substitute Levine as the attorney of record was subsequently denied by the court, and court-appointed counsel, who admitted on the record that he was not prepared, was kept on the case. This 15-page motion seeks dismissal of the criminal case under California Penal Code Section 995 and 859B, arguing that the defendant's statutory and constitutional rights violated during the preliminary hearing process. Main arguments. Superior Court Judge Michael Bush held Richard English in custody with no bail in violation of the Eighth Amendment and in violation of the 10-court day rule, specifically Penal Code Section 859B. Richard English argues he was held in custody beyond the statutory 10-court day deadline for a preliminary hearing without a valid personal waiver. He contends the continuance from January 30, 2026 to February 19, 2026 was granted over his objection and without legally sufficient good cause. Richard English in his motion argues dismissal is the required remedy. 1,072 dates of improper continuance and continued detention beyond 10 court days. In his motion alleges appointed counsel admitted he was unprepared after approximately 133 days of appointment, lacking discovery, the case file, witness interviews, and subpoenas. It argues the court should have denied the continuance or released the defendant on his own recognizance instead of keeping him in custody without bail. Denial of counsel of choice violates the Sixth Amendment. The motion asserts the court improperly refused to substitute retained attorney Leonard B. Levine during the preliminary hearing. It characterizes this as a structural Sixth Amendment error, relying on United States v. Gonzales-Lopez, 548 U.S., at page 142 2006. Requiring reversal without a showing of prejudice. Ineffective assistance and conflict of interest of conflict defense attorney Martin Ziefringer. The motion claims the Superior Court-appointed counsel who was completely unprepared, failed to seek release from custody, failed to obtain discovery, failed to subpoena witnesses, and improperly requested a continuance over the defendant's objection. It argues these actions created a conflict of interest and violated the defendant's right to effective assistance of counsel. Superior Court's violation of the uninterrupted preliminary hearing requirement. The motion contends that once the preliminary hearing began, it was improperly interrupted for nearly 3 weeks, violating Penal Code Section 861 and Session requirement. Court-appointed counsel could not waive speedy hearing rights. Richard Inglis argues that appointed counsel lacked authority to waive his speedy preliminary hearing rights over his express objection. It maintains only the defendant personally could waive the statutory protections. Authorities cited. Richard Inglish's motion relies on numerous California and federal cases, include Soto/Sorrento v. Superior Court, Stroud, Superior Court, People v. Johnson, People v. Cawas, United States v. Gonzales-Lopez, Powell v. Alabama, Strickland v. Washington, People v. Doolin, Lake v. Superior Court. In addition to the previously referenced constitutional and statutory violations, during the preliminary hearing, Judge Michael Bush threatened Leonard B. Levine for attempting to advocate for Richard English. The transcript shows the judge explicitly threatened contempt, sanctions, referral to the state bar, or other consequences. You can quote the exact language. The court's statements toward retained counsel chilled advocacy and interfered with defendants' right to counsel of choice. The motion asks the court to requested relief, dismiss the criminal complaint under Penal Code Section 995 because the defendant was not legally committed following an allegedly unlawful preliminary hearing, find that violations of the 10-court-day rule, denial of counsel of choice, unlawful continuances, denial of discovery, and violation of the continuous hearing requirement, dismissal of the charges. Overall, the motion argues that the cumulative effect of these alleged procedural and constitutional violations deprived the defendant of a lawful preliminary examination, making dismissal the appropriate remedy. Leonard Levine attempted to appear and advocate on behalf of Mr. Richard English. The court made statements that could reasonably be interpreted as threatening sanctions or other adverse consequences if counsel persisted. The court's comments had the effect of discouraging retained counsel from representing Mr. English and interfered with Mr. English's Sixth Amendment right to counsel of his choice. The transcript reflects the court's statements and should be considered in evaluating whether the denial of counsel of choice constituted structural error under United States v. Gonzales-Lopez,